Hello world, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Little Bit Different podcast with your host Corey Sterling. What's up? I hope this finds you well. I am recording this episode from the beautiful and dreamy and idyllic and windy beach of Praia in the state of Ceará in the country of Brazil. And this episode is a little bit of an ode to the state of Ceará, where I've spent part of the past 4 years here, and I have a sneaking suspicion feeling that I'm not going to be living here anymore. I think it's a place that I'm always going to come back and visit, but I think that my time spending extended periods of time in Ceará has come to a close. And so what I wanted to do in this week's episode is share with all of you some tips and tricks and stories and wonderful things for anyone to know if they were going to come to visit this region. One thing that has been really cool with me in putting out the podcast and connecting with people who are listening is that people will ask me questions, or they'll say, oh, awesome, you shared about this place in Mexico or in Bali. So the intention for this episode is a little bit of a personal guide to exploring the state of Ceará, which is in the northeast of Brazil. And I'm really, really excited to do it. And for me, it's also a really fun little process because there seems to be a sense of closure that's coming in for me as I close this particular chapter with this particular region. And I do just want to say before jumping into it that one of the things that I've learned from having a traveling lifestyle and being a traveler and living all over the world in so many different places is that one of the biggest privileges as a person and as a traveler is when you get to leave a place on your own terms, and you get to be conscious of the things that you loved about a place, that are special about a place, that really made you connect with a place. And for me, I think I have maybe a little bit over 2 weeks left before I take a trip with some friends to Colombia and maybe Central America afterwards. But I'm really, really being intentional in these 2 weeks to be present with all the things that I love about Ceará and all the places that I love and all the people that I love and all the things that I always love doing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those, and again, just such an immense gratitude and appreciation in life when you get to choose when a chapter ends, because it often happens in life that we don't get to choose, and sometimes there will be circumstances outside of our control where it's like, oh, I love living in this place, I love this thing, like boom, I gotta go, like I've got 5 days and now I gotta get out of here, or quickly change for unforeseen circumstances. So Ceará has changed me. I realize with certainty that I'm a very, very different person today than the person who arrived here 4 years ago. Obviously, 4 years is a really long time. And it's just been the most beautiful playground, paradise to enjoy life and to grow as an individual. And I'm excited to share a little bit about what the experience has been like. And then also anyone who wants to travel to Praia in the future, you could listen to this and have an awesome epic guide from someone who's spent a lot of time here and who's definitely made the most. So, as always, I hope that you enjoy. The first thing that I want to start talking about as it relates to Ceará is just share more of where my experiences have been in the places that I know well. So Fortaleza is the capital. If you're flying here from Europe or from abroad, you'll likely come to Fortaleza. If you come to Praia or Jericoacoara or some of the other places that I'll mention, the airport that's close is Cruz. The Cruz Airport, CRUZ, the airport code is JJD. It's an expensive airport. It's awesome. It's super regional. I've had flights where it's like I'm leaving at 4 o'clock and I show up to the airport at 3:35. And it's just a small regional airport, one flight at a time. Never any traffic or issues, but in all of my time in Ceará, I've actually kite surfed the entire coast of the entire state. So I've spent a lot of time in the water getting to know the places, and I can only there's a couple of places where I've spent an extended amount of time. So south of Fortaleza, there's a town that's called Canoa Quebrada, which means broken canoe. And Canoa Quebrada is so beautiful and so much fun and so worth visiting. It's a very roots sort of low-key place. There's a lot of paragliding. It's like a paragliding capital in Brazil. And there's a really cute little main street called Broadway, which the Brazilians call Broadway. And there's delicious food and great vibes and like reggae vibes and beautiful cliffs on the beaches. So Canoa Quebrada is worth checking out. Fortaleza is a big city. It's also a little bit dangerous. I did have one experience in Fortaleza. My friend was driving me to the airport and my flight was leaving at like 5 a.m. So maybe it was like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And we actually got chased by 2 motorcycles. But luckily my friend is a cop and is now in the army, and he was like full-on movie blockbuster. There was silence in the car for the 6 minutes that it was happening. It was just crazy. He was just gunning red lights. These 2 motorcycles were chasing us. Yeah, look, people talk about Brazil being dangerous. In cities, for sure, it's a different reality than a lot of these beach towns that I talk about. But Fortaleza is the capital. It's beautiful. There's a nice little beach area. I haven't spent too much time there. I'm not a city person, but definitely a night or 2 nights could be cool in Fortaleza. Moving up, there's a beach town that's called Cumbuco. Cumbuco is like, it's a big kite surfing town, but because it's so much closer to Fortaleza and so much more accessible, is a lot busier. There's a lot of parties. There's a lot more people. And it's sort of like the main hub for kite surfing in Ceará. Cumbuco, Cumbuco. I've been there 3 times. I've never loved it. It's not my vibe. It's a little bit too busy, too city vibe-ish. And just like it's a big party place. I'm not such a party guy anymore. I stopped drinking a while ago, and I don't really go out too often. But Cumbuco is a place that a lot of people will go to learn kite. It's a great place to learn kite. There's a super cool community. There's a lot of interesting people that are there, and there's a lot of fun if you're looking to do a trip. Near Cumbuco, there's a beach town that's called Taíba, Taiba. Taíba is a surf spot in Ceará, and there's also a gorgeous hotel that I stayed at and had just a magical experience at. I think the hotel's called Carmel Taíba. And it's pretty pricey, but it was so worth it, and it was so beautiful. And Taíba's this very, very small town with a little bit of kite, but mostly known as a surf spot. Beautiful, epic sunsets. There's like a nice little hill that you can climb and watch the sunset, and people chill there. And it's a small, safe place, which is really wonderful. There's a couple places north of, in between Taíba and a place called Icarezinho. It's called Flecheiras and Guriú, and I haven't spent a lot of time in those places, so I can't really speak. I've been there once, but nice big beaches, cool kite surfing. You can kite surf in lakes, totally worth exploring. The next town that I absolutely love, and this is actually, it's my favorite place to visit, not my favorite place to stay, but there's a town called Icare de Amontada, which is just known locally as Icarezinho. And in Portuguese, when you add an inho, it means like a small version of something. So Icarezinho is like a small little beach town that is just delightful. It's a beach town. There's big, wide beaches. The town's situated in a nice little protected bay. If you walk to the left or you walk to the right of the bay where the hub of the town is, it's just beautiful, open, long beaches. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. There's a pousada that I always stay at called Jardim do Vento, which means the Garden of Wind, and you can't go wrong. It's a paradise. It's a really, really small, low-key, relaxed place. This afternoon, I'm going to go kite surfing, and then I'm going to go meet a friend who's visiting me for 2 weeks, and we're going to stay at Jardim do Vento, and we're going to be in Icarezinho. And I just love it there because the connection with nature is so pure, and it's such a small, relaxed place. Like, amazing to walk on the beach and watch the stars and look at the moon, and you can kite surf, and it's really, really beautiful. There's delicious small restaurants. It's just an understated, relaxed, cool, beautiful town. So Icarezinho, make sure that you mark it.
Hello, world. This is Corey from A Little Bit Different Podcast. I'm going to tell you a statistic now. You're not going to believe it. Only 22% of people who listen to the Little Bit Different Podcast actually subscribe or like the channel. So right now, I'm on a mission to get 250 subscribers to the channel by the end of the year. Will you help me? I'm hoping that the answer is yes. So please, anytime you watch any of our content, hit subscribe, that whole button there, and like it and share it and keep being different and having the most fun ever.
After Icarezinho, continuing to move north, there's a town that's called Ilha de Guajiru. Ilha means island in Portuguese. Ilha de Guajiru. Ilha de Guajiru is a great place to learn kiting. So let's say somehow you found this podcast in some point in the future and you're like, hey, I really want to learn to kite surf. My recommendation, having seen a lot of people go through the process, is go to Ilha de Guajiru for 4 days. Be super dialed in and intentional and focused and learn for 4 days there. And then go visit other cooler places. Ilha de Guajiru is very, very small. So it's a small little town. And there's very, very few Brazilians. I know it sounds so weird for me to say that. But there are a lot of Europeans that go to Ilha de Guajiru. It's a small little lake, like lagoa. So it's not really a lake, but it's like a big pond. And everyone just is in the pond. And it's actually so crazy because when it's low tide, the whole pond dries out. And when it's full tide, it's just absolutely massive and pumping and filled with people. But because of its protected location, the lagoa is very, very flat. So learning to kite, and Ceará, the state, is a very, very windy state. So that's why there's so much kite surf here. Learning to kite in Ilha de Guajiru is highly recommended. It's one of the places I learned. I've seen my friends who have learned have the best success there. And so it's a great place to learn to kite, but if you're looking for authentic, awesome Brazilian adventure, it's not my recommendation. After Ilha de Guajiru, we finally come to Praia. Praia has been the place where I've spent the past 4 seasons. I've spent 4 seasons in a row kiting here. Usually the wind season in Ceará is between July and January. So I've spent parts of the last 4 seasons here during those months. I've been in Praia for that time. Praia is like, it's my heart. It's one of those unique places in the world where I've lived and spent a lot of time, and that I've really enjoyed and I've really grown as a person. Praia now is changing very, very quickly. It's one thing that's so interesting about life in Brazil and finding these sort of small beach towns when they're a little bit undeveloped versus when they start getting developed and getting built up is they evolve, they change. There's a lot of amazing opportunity for local people, for more work, for different type of work. The value of the property skyrockets, which is amazing for the local people as well. But also the towns can lose a little bit of their charm. But I won't get into any of that about Praia because I want to focus on the positives and how much this place has given me. And Praia is just delightful. It's also a very kite-centric place. So the beach in Praia is not the most beautiful beach in Brazil, but if you're here to kite surf, Praia is the place. It's a beach, it's lined up with different kite schools the whole way, and people are here to kite. There are some delicious restaurants, the food's really, really good, and there's some cool local vibes. I would say it feels 70-80% Brazilian and 20 or 30% gringo, so there definitely are people from outside of Brazil who come hang out here and kite, myself included, being one of them. It's very peaceful. There's not a lot going on at the time of recording. There's not a lot going on. During New Year's, everywhere in Brazil is busy. So during New Year's, Praia is really, really busy as well. But Praia has the national park, Jericoacoara National Park, which is where I walk every night with my dog. And it's so far, at the time of recording as well, it's completely untouched. Cars are not allowed in the park. And there's just nothing. There's no development. And it's such a peaceful, beautiful, amazing place. What I love about Praia for me is like, I love that I can kite. I love that I can go to the gym. I like that it's a very, very relaxed vibe. It's an athletic place. It's an athlete's place. Like if someone's coming to party and go crazy, Praia is not the place that you would go. You'd go to Jericoacoara, which I'll talk about in a second. But Praia there's amazing nature. There's incredible wind to kite surf. And it just, for me, has consistently produced the most balanced lifestyle of having my sport with kite surfing and improving and loving it, having my friends who I love and who are very, very sweet, having an awesome gym that I'm able to go to, and having amazing access to nature. And one thing that hasn't changed about Praia is like, once the sun goes down, at any point, either if I'm walking, I can walk in 10 minutes and be completely, absolutely in untouched, pristine nature, enjoying the stars or the moon or the sand dunes or whatever it is. Also, if I hop in my car and go for a drive on the beach, 6 minutes driving in my car on the beach, I'm completely alone. And I love that. That's always been what Praia's been about for me. And so Praia's like, if you're into kite surfing, Praia's a place you have to be. If you're not into kite surfing, you could spend a night, maybe 2 nights in Praia, but there's not much to do other than the kite surfing focus here. Cruising right along, the next beach that you'll find after Praia is the famous Jericoacoara, which is a really, really beautiful beach. It's one of the only beaches in Brazil where you can see the sunset go over the water. Over the past, Jeri, they just call it Jeri. Jeri was a place like 10, 15 years ago where there was no power. It was super charming. There were no cars. Jeri's just like gotten absolutely massively taken over by tourism, by mass tourism. Obviously, when you build an airport, the airport in Cruz, JJD, brings a lot of people to to Jericoacoara. So Jeri now is like, it's a different vibe than it was. But it's a really, really cool town. It can be a little bit busy or overwhelming for me because I'm not a city guy and I like being in nature. But Jeri's definitely worth visiting. If you like going out and you like partying, Jeri's where it's going to happen. Every night they'll have a samba or a forró or reggae or a bar with electronic music. Jeri is much more European, gringo-based than Praia is. When I'm there, it's very common to see a lot of people in really nice European clothes and a lot of French people smoking cigarettes because that's sort of just what they do. But Jeri is worth going to. There's also a big sand dune where everyone watches sunset, which is called creatively they've called it the Sunset Sand Dune. And Jeri's a place, like you can't deny it that it's a place. It's not for me. I've been here for 4 seasons. I've never once spent the night in Jeri. I'll always just drive and come back. The drive back from Jeri after a night out is magical because you're driving on the sand in this park and I always feel like I'm in, like a moon rover. And it doesn't feel like planet Earth because the scenery is so insane and it's so completely dark and the stars are incredible. And for me, that's always been a highlight. But I couldn't talk about Ceará and the northern part of Ceará without speaking about Jeri. So it's a place maybe 10 kilometers north of Jeri. There's a small town called Guriú where people will kite surf. There's also a small lagoa there, like a small little lake that's protected. So it's flatter and a lot of people will learn to study there. And Guriú has like one fancy Western hotel that I stayed at once and didn't love it, not my vibe. Keep going and we get to a town called Tatajuba, which I love. I love Tatajuba. Tatajuba is magical. It's always brought me some incredible experiences. The first time I was there was December 2020, the last time I was there was last week in November 2024. Tatajuba has changed a lot. The development that I'm talking about or speaking about, Tatajuba it used to be, there was like one restaurant, you could walk for miles and not see anything. Now there's a lot of construction, so its charm has changed, but it's still a very unique place. Tatajuba also has a lake in front of it that at low tide will dry up. At high tide just becomes massively full with kite surfers. And again, Tatajuba is a predominantly European place. There will be a lot of foreigners who come there to kite, but Tatajuba is just paradise. It really is paradise, and I am so happy that I got to experience it. You know, every year I've been here, I always go to Tatajuba. It's usually a place I'll go by myself to sort of like reflect on life or write or think about things, just because it's so special. And Tatajuba I cannot recommend enough. There's a pousada called Pousada Santa Maria, which is owned by a wonderful French woman who's my friend. And there's another pousada that's called Kitejuba, Kitejuba. Those are the two places I say. I can say with certainty that my dog Gringo is the happiest when we're in Tatajuba, just because it's so open and so free. There's wild pigs. He loves hanging out with them, and you can just walk. You literally can walk for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles and just be on the most beautiful beach. And Tatajuba special. The last place, I have two more places in Ceará that I can mention. One is called Maceió. Maceió is a small beach. It's really close to the border of the next state north, which is the state of Piauí. Piauí is one of the smallest and one of the poorest states in Brazil. So the vibe in Piauí is very different than it is in Ceará. Maceió is usually an awesome place to kite to. I've stayed there. One time I stayed there for the weekend. It's just a small beach with a couple of restaurants, really easygoing. And like there, it's like 95% Brazilian, which is really cool and good local vibes, but understated. And then the next place to visit after that, before getting to the state of Piauí, is Curimas, which is very, very special. I've only been once. I'm going to go in the next couple of weeks, but that's sort of a place that everyone's saying that, you know, what Praia was 5 years ago, Curimas is now. Now, when looking at Brazil as a whole, I've been very lucky to spend, for me, it's crazy that I've spent so much time in Brazil, and Brazil feels like home to me. And I want so many people to enjoy it and to experience it and to know what it's like. And I want to explain a little bit of the things to me that make Ceará special. The first thing is wind for kiting. So if you're not a kiter, it makes sense to be here because it's a beautiful place and there's a lot of nature. But there are more beautiful beaches than the beaches that exist here. And there are more exciting cultures than Cearense culture. So first things first, it's about kiting. And if you're not kiting, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place, but obviously kiting adds so much more. When you think about the things that a certain place has, like if you think about really cool, beautiful, fun parties, you'd probably think of Rio de Janeiro. If you think about a cosmopolitan city with amazing restaurants and great service and tons of culture, you would think about Sao Paulo. If you're thinking about dreamy beaches, you can think of Alagoas, or you can think about Bahia, which is where Taíba's in. And so all of those places have something special. And I think part of there's an element of understatedness to Ceará, where it's not really internationally renowned. It's like all of these other places in Brazil. No one's like, oh, like Ceará in Brazil. It's sort of like a random Canadian province where it's just like a place. But because of the wind, I've come here and I've loved it. And I think that understatedness and humility to some degree is what makes it so charming. It doesn't, this Ceará does not produce the best music. It doesn't produce the best parties. It doesn't have so many unique foods that, a lot of other Brazilian states will have or will contribute. But it's a simple, understated, relaxed place with very easygoing and nice people. And there's something that's incredibly charming about that. Something that I just love about it here. Traditionally, a lot of these towns are just fishing towns. That, kiting, I don't know how old kiting is, but let's say 15 years where it's gotten really, really popular, or at least mainstream. And before that, all of these towns, Tatajuba, Praia, Jericoacoara, Icarezinho, all of them, they were just simple, small, little fishing villages. And now, the world is exposed to them because of kiting, but the people and the core of those places is still that same understatedness, humility, kindness, generosity, welcoming, energy, and vibes. So it's sort of like, I think a lot of people, when they would want to come visit Brazil, they'd think oh, I need to be in Rio, or I need to go to Sao Paulo, or I need to do this. But for me, Brazil's a continent. Brazil's massive. So there's so many different elements to what makes up Brazil. And Ceará versus the Amazon are two completely different Brazils. And then Ceará and Rio Grande do Sul, which is the southernmost state in Brazil, where it's a lot of barbecue and meat and cowboys and cold weather and very, very different. That's a whole, in one country, there's so many different versions. And here is just the easygoing, relaxed, calm, safe beach life that is filled with wind. It's been so special for me, and what Ceará has always been about for me is the nature. I've never been here for a reason that's not related to nature, and the wind is crazy, and sometimes I just walk around after months of living here, and I'm is it still this windy? Can I go for a walk without being incredibly windy? But it is windy and it is beautiful, and the people are so kind and generous, but the stars are amazing, the sand dunes are incredible. You can be isolated in nature, and I think that's what I've appreciated and really loved so much about my time in Ceará, is the opportunity to have a home where I can play sports and have, amenities like Wi-Fi and some delicious local food, and to, buy fish from local fishermen off a boat and all of those things. But more than that, just be able to be alone in nature in a place that has all of this. And I've grown tremendously as a person in Praia and in Ceará, and I knew it the first moment that I arrived in Ceará. The first moment that I got out of the car, I landed in Fortaleza. My friend Guy and I, we drove from Fortaleza to Praia. I got out of the car, it was sunset, I saw all these kites in the water, and I was just I will live here one day. And then I just stayed, because that's what I do sometimes. But on reflection, it's been such an amazing chapter. It's been so beautiful, and it's been very simple, and there's not a lot of complex lessons. I could talk about my time in Bali, and in a short period of time I experienced a whole lot of different things. With Praia and Ceará, it's just always been gradual, and it's always felt like home. And just bouncing between these different Brazilian kitesurfing beach towns has been amazing. I'm so grateful to the place and to the people and to my friends and to the park and to the sand dunes and to the wind and to the sunsets and all of the trees. It's been an amazing ride. So I'm going to continue to be present with it. And I hope that this information is helpful. I hope there's someone out there who is thinking about taking a trip to Brazil or thinking about taking out kite surfing, and will listen to this, and now you know the places to check out. So whatever it is that you do, stay different. Always stay different. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Peace.